It's do or die time for Arizona State Sun Devils basketball, but how on earth are they going to get back on the right track in order to even possibly make the tournament? Well, that's what we're here to talk about on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
Are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, this podcast is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. And stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Hopping into today's conversation, we got to talk a little bit of basketball because the Sun Devils have been in a skid lately. They have lost 5 of their last 7 games. How many of those on the road? Only 2 of them on the road? 3 of them? 2 of them. Only 2 on the road. So they need to start getting it together because they were at one point in time a 15-3 team and controlled their whole destiny for the remainder of the year, which included potentially being one of the better teams in the Pac-12, and have now fallen off pretty dramatically. They were 1 point second place in the Pac-12. They're now 6th place in the Pac-12. They're not in the bracket as of right now from the predictions that I've seen. And quite frankly, they don't deserve to be in the bracket right now. This is a team that just needs to figure out itself and get back on the right track. There's a handful of ways that a handful of things that they need to do in order to get back on track. We're going to talk about those things today. Some of the things that I didn't have in my top 3. One of the most important things for this team is to just be able to take more consistently good shots. I feel like Arizona State has been playing very rushed lately. And it's not even as though they're playing fast and they're taking good opportunities. It feels like they're forcing a lot of shots. It feels like this is a team that isn't setting things up as well as they used to. And that goes to the defensive side of the ball too, because it feels like there's been a lot more open opportunities than there have been recently for the team. And that there's been a lot more lapses in coverage and in defense. It feels like teams are not having as difficult a time as they were in the first half of the season against the Sun Devils. They got to clean that up because moving forward for the rest of the year, there's still some pretty tough games left on the schedule. They still have to play U of A and UCLA both on the road. They still have to play USC. This isn't a stretch that is going to be easy for the Sun Devils. That could potentially be 3 losses to end the season. And you still have at Cal versus Colorado and versus Utah. The way they're playing right now, none of these games feel like easy wins. They've got to start doing the little things right. And that's where we're going to go ahead and start this conversation is you got to get out of foul trouble because it feels like every single game that we've seen Arizona State play this year, it feels like they're constantly going against the refs. But with that being said, you can't blame the refs for everything. At some point in time, you have to take responsibility and understand that you need to start playing better basketball. You need to play more fundamentally sound, and you can't be committing the small, tiny little errors that lead to fouls and get guys fouled out. I mean, Warren Washington has fouled out several times this year, most recently against Oregon, where it felt like there was a point in time where they were, quote unquote, smart fouls, where he was playing a little more aggressive and trying to set the tone. But the problem is when you're doing that, eventually you get yourself to a point where if you foul again, you're out of the game. That's when teams are going to realize, okay, if he fouls us, he's gone. So we're going to play a little more aggressive on him. We're going to play up more. We're going to be a little more physical and try to get him to draw a foul. And if he does, then he's gone. If he doesn't, then we're just going to be the more aggressive team, and that's going to help us move forward. That seems to be the problem that Arizona State has found itself in lately. And it's not just Warren Washington. I know that Devin Cambridge has been in some foul trouble recently. I know that There's been several players, Duke Brennan off the bench. These are guys that just get into that territory where it's potentially detrimental to the team at that point. So for Arizona State, they need to start being smarter when it comes to their fouls. They're putting opposing teams in the bonus a lot sooner than they need to be. They're putting teams on the line a lot sooner than they need to be. Looking at their 5 most recent losses, Oregon was on the line 26 times. 26 times. You can't do that and expect to win. Washington State was put on there 18 times. Washington was put on 28 times. USC was put on 14 times, and UCLA was put on 21 times. That's a lot of extra opportunities that this team just simply cannot be allowing. For Arizona State to start winning these games more consistently, they need to be a smarter team that isn't making as many critical, borderline, like obscenely dumb mistakes. This is just shooting yourself in the foot more than you need to as a team that is already not having that much trouble doing that by themselves. When you're beating yourselves by having the refs go against you, it only makes your job that much harder to win basketball games. Right now, that just can't happen because Arizona State's not doing the rest of the little things correctly. Like I mentioned, it feels like the fundamentals just aren't there right now, offensively and defensively. And when you're not doing the little things right, and then you stack the penalties on top of it, your odds of winning just plummet. And that's what we've seen. Like I said, we've lost 5 of our last 7 games. It's not a coincidence that the team has consistently been in foul trouble. And even in their wins, they're still putting themselves in foul trouble. So right now for Arizona State, they just got to find a way to not be placing themselves in these situations to consistently lose out and to consistently have the refs playing against them. Because yes, it does feel like a lot of teams are getting calls their way compared to what we're getting. But again, you're placing yourself in that situation to have the refs allegedly playing against you. You keep doing that, you're going to keep losing games. That's got to change if they want to start winning games again. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new betting partner because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid for your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Make sure that you tune in to the Locked On College Basketball podcast next. It's everything you need to know about college hoops in one place. Hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players on Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you're getting your podcasts. Back into our conversation, looking at the next thing that Arizona State needs to start doing well. And this is one of the things that frustrates the absolute heck out of me. They need to play harder off the glass. It feels like Arizona State is consistently getting out-rebounded by opposing teams. Against Oregon, there were 7 offensive rebounds for the Ducks and 30 rebounds defensively. They out-rebounded Arizona State in both of those categories. Against Washington, they were out-rebounded 16 offensive rebounds and 31 defensive rebounds. Both of them out-rebounded. Against Washington, 7 offensive rebounds to 10. So they did out-rebound them offensively, but 41 compared to 32. A lot of missed shots in that game, obviously. Against USC, 13 offensive rebounds. ASU actually had 17. That's a great step forward, but 26 defensive rebounds to 16. Got to be better. Against UCLA, out-rebounded offensively and defensively. So it's an ongoing theme for the team that they consistently just aren't playing as hard underneath the rim. And that happens when you don't have a lot of big guys because they typically are fielding 4 guards and Warren Washington. I understand, especially when you run into teams like a Stanford or a UCLA or an Oregon that typically have a lot bigger guys, or U of A who have a lot bigger guys on the court. That's just going to happen. But at the same time, you need your big men to start stepping up a little more. Warren Washington has been a very good player for the team, but I feel like he could still be better, especially underneath. I feel like Warren Washington is lacking that killer instinct right now. And I know it's there. When you're as big as him, it's hard to not be one of the biggest, strongest, most physical guys on the court. That's one of the reasons he's fouling out, is because he's just playing so big and strong. But underneath the rim and off the glass, you got to be more consistent. You got to be that big man, and you can't be afraid to go up and get it. I feel like this is a team that should be rebounding a lot better than they are right now. Warren Washington's leading the team with 7 rebounds, and then the next guy is Devin Cambridge with 5.5. I feel like that's too much of a disparity. I understand that's not even 2 rebounds, but looking at the rest of the team too, it just goes down and down and down. I mean, Desmond Cambridge Jr. and DJ Horn are both only averaging 3.5 right now. Those are your starters. You got to find a way for these guys to find a way to step up more when it comes to playing hard underneath. This goes hand in hand not only with playing harder off the glass, but also being a more physical team. It feels like Arizona State is consistently getting outmanned and outmuscled by these guys. These things happen, I understand, but it needs to change. You need to start having guys that are more in tune and not afraid to be those bigger men and be the guys who are going to be more aggressive, be the jerks on the court. That's what you need right now. But again, it's such a hard concept to do when you're getting in foul trouble. So this goes back to, like I said at the beginning, doing the little things right. There are ways to be physical and not get called for fouls. Arizona State needs to figure out how to do that sooner rather than later, because like I said, they are on the cusp of not making the bracket for the umpteenth time in Bobby Hurley's era as the head coach here. Something needs to change sooner rather than later, like I said, because if you can't find a way to get more rebounds, you're taking away opportunities for yourself. You're allowing more opportunities for opposing offenses. And long and behold, right now you're paying for it. So for Arizona State, got to find a way to be more physical when it comes to rebounding offensively and defensively. You need to play bigger than you are, even if it's not Warren Washington and his 7-foot self. You need those guys who aren't going to be afraid to go out there, go up and get the ball, give yourselves more opportunity. It goes hand in hand with playing great defense right now, is not being afraid to go up, be physical, get those rebounds, and start getting yourself back in the right direction. One more time, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Locked On Sun Devils. Make sure that you tune in to Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the college basketball landscape. It's Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you're getting your podcasts. The final thing that Arizona State needs to start doing in order to win these games again, and this has been something that I've been saying all year long. This is something that everyone has noticed. This isn't something that is completely subjective. It's not something that only I'm thinking. Arizona State needs to start playing 40 full minutes, because it feels like this is a one-half team. It's either a first half or a second half team. Feels like Arizona State just can't consistently put together a full 40 minutes. It feels like they're falling apart when they need to either finish out the first half strong or finish out the second half to get the win. I don't know what it is, because Arizona State can't decide if they're a first half or second half team, because there's some times where they just absolutely crap the bed in the first half and then dominate the second. And there's times where they come out guns blazing in the first half and then disappear in the second. We can't even get a pulse on if this is a first half or second half team. They are consistently just not putting together 40 minutes, though. This was 100% the case with the UCLA game. UCLA came to Tempe, and Arizona State was up 35-30 at half. They finished the first half with that unbelievable half-court shot by Des Cambridge. They proceeded to allow 44 points in the second half, absolutely get dominated in the final 5 to 10 minutes of the game, and lose it when they should have won it. The USC game, they could not put together a consistent effort in either half. Absolutely got dominated off the board and everything else for the team. Against Washington, this is a team that came out great in the second half. 34 points in the second half, sent the game to overtime. But they only put up 20 points in the first half. 20 in the first half. That can't happen. You got to find a way to play a full 40 minutes. ASU against Washington State, 24 in the first half, 34 in the second. You increased, but guess what? You gave up 36 and 39. Can't do that. Against Oregon, this is a 30-27 game at halftime that ASU was winning. They gave up 48 points in the second half. 48 points. That is absolutely inexcusable. Arizona State has done this all year long. At this point, it feels like something that's not going to change. At this point, it feels like just one of the characteristics of this basketball team, that they're just not going to be a team that is able to play a full 40 minutes. And that is so frustrating because there are so many games that you should have been able to win if you were able to put together a consistent effort. This goes back to earlier in the season against a team like Texas Southern. This goes to the U of A game, which was very winnable. This goes to the UCLA game, which was very winnable. This is just one of those things that is absolutely shooting Arizona State in the foot. And because you're doing this to yourself, it feels like it is ultimately going to cost you an opportunity to get to the bracket. And that stinks. That absolutely stinks. That you are likely just not going to be able to get to that point. Arizona State has been a talented basketball team this year. They have been 10 times better than anyone expected. And they have shown some glimpses of the future with young guys like Duke Brennan and Austin Nunez and Jemiah Neal. But unfortunately, all the pieces together can't seem to put together a consistent 40 minutes. It doesn't feel like they can be the more physically dominant team. It doesn't feel like this is a team that can stay out of foul trouble. It doesn't feel like a team that can play fundamentally sound basketball. As a whole, looking at this team, these weaknesses are glaring weaknesses that need to be cleaned up. Because if you can't find a way to do that, then unfortunately, this is just not going to end the way you wanted it to end. This was once a very promising season for Arizona State. You were once a 15-3 basketball team. You're now 17-8. You are on the verge of missing the bracket after looking like a team that was absolutely going to place no questions asked. Something's got to give. Something's got to change. These are the biggest things, in my opinion, that need to change. I'm sure you can come up with a laundry list of things for the team. But that's all the time I have for today's episode. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like and subscribe. Turn on those notifications so you get an update when we post new content. And, of course, stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36 and the podcast as LO_Sun Devils. Till next time, though, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.